everybody dies. Hey everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. For today's video, I want to talk about books that made me cry. It's a lot of books, so strap in, grab yourself a drink, some Doritos. The very first book that ever made me cry, I read in 6th grade. That book is called Cages by Peg Carrot. It is 150 pages long, huge font because it's a child's book. This story is about a girl named Kit who gets caught shoplifting and has to do community service, which happens at the local animal shelter. Things are going well, and then it takes a devastating turn, and my little 12-year-old heart could not handle it. I remember reading on the couch in my living room at my parents' house, just reading along, and then I finished a chapter and I was like, what? And I went to the next page, and I didn't understand what had happened. So I went back and I reread the chapter, as you do, and then it hit me what had happened, and I took the book like so, just like this, and I hurled it across the living room, and I screamed, "I hate this book!" I just burst into big tears, and my mom came in. She picked up the book. She's like, "What's wrong?" And I told her what had happened in the book, and I was just inconsolable. She was like, "Welcome to the world of reading," because I'm pretty sure she had just finished the 6th Harry Potter book. She obviously had read many books that had made her cry, and this was my first heartbreaking book. I've never read it since, but I have a copy of it just for sentimental purposes. Oh, this book was rough. I hated it. But it was good. It just hurt me so much to read as a little 12-year-old me. She had no idea what was coming her way. Most of the books are more recent, in my more mature years. Some of them are parts of series. One series that made me cry every single book was the Me Before You series by Jojo Moyes. This book is about a quadriplegic man and a woman who becomes his caretaker, and they fall in love, and he makes a really heartbreaking decision at the end of the book. The first time I read this book, I was reading it in my living room. I don't know if I was engaged to Devin yet, but we were together, and I just started sobbing. Just big alligator tears. And I finished the book, and I crawled across the floor and up into his chair and just curled up in his lap and just bawled and I had to let it out. It was so emotional. Oh gosh, this book was so sad, but it was so good, which is why I got the next book, which is After You by Jojo Moyes. This just follows the aftermath of Lou, her handling the grief that she has to go through. I cried a lot during this book, too. I can't remember what part I cried at, but I definitely cried. I don't know what it is about Jojo Moyes. She kills me. And then in the conclusion, I'm hoping this isn't the conclusion to the series, but Still Me was released in January of 2018. I read this, and I finished it on a plane, and I bawled my eyes out on the plane. This book is killing me. It's so sad. It's so good. I'm sorry. It was so good, and I hope that she's making another one. I need an extension of this series. Heart-wrenching, all 3 of these. The next 3 are all by the same author, and it's probably going to seem silly that these are books that have made me cry, but all 3 of them are part of the Ender's Game series. 2 are part of the Shadow series section of the series. The first one is Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card. This book follows Ender Wiggin, who, if you've read the Ender's Game series, at the end of the battle with the Formix, he goes on a journey and he just begins to travel through space and time in huge leaps and bounds. And in this book, a second alien species is discovered, and after a misunderstanding and accident, Ender decides to leave his sister, Valentine, who's been traveling with him this entire time, to go on a journey to this planet where these aliens are. And that journey will take, I think it takes him just a couple weeks at near light speed, but in real-time space, it's about 30 years. And so he leaves his sister. During their parting, he realizes that, she got married, and that changed their relationship in a way that it couldn't be recovered. He loves his brother-in-law, but the relationship that him and his sister had, being so close, can't be that way anymore because she has that closeness with her husband. And every time I read them talking about it, I get a little choked up because the same kind of applies with me and my brother. We're very, very close, but we're both married, and so we're changing, in relation to our relationships with our spouses. So it's just a disconnect in how the relationships used to be compared to how they are now. And it gets me every time. Oh gosh, I don't want to cry in this video. The next 2 are from the Shadow series. This one is The Shadow of the Giant. It's the 4th book in the Shadow series. Our main character, Bean, has to make a decision at the very end of the book that ends up hurting those that he loves closest to him, but he has to do it for what's best for him and for the rest of his family. And it makes me really, really sad. The continuation of this book is actually the other book that makes me cry. This is Shadows in Flight by Orson Scott Card. I don't want to give spoilers for the whole series in case you want to read them. Bean escapes with his children, and this basically just covers the end of Bean's life. And being a character that you have loved for 5 books and seeing, the end of that story hurts and it is sad, but it's also good and full of hope because we know that we're getting another book in this series. Hopefully. Come on, Mr. Card. Please, we need it. The last page always makes me tear up a little bit. The Book Thief by Marcus Zusick. This book was so good. It's told from this perspective of death and the personification of death, who is watching over this town that is doomed to die in World War II. Nazi Germany, World War II, with the expulsion of the Jews. Death mostly follows a young girl that is in this town. It's heart-wrenching and beautifully written and beautifully told. This book is a masterpiece. This book is amazing. If you haven't read The Book Thief, you need to. I read this book last year for the first time, and I recently saw the movie for the first time. That book is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. This book is about a young man in high school whose name is Simon, and his secret is that he is gay. And when he is outed by somebody without his consent, his life just takes a turn that he was not prepared for. And this goes through the rest of his journey of being bullied and peer pressured through high school. And he has a secret pen pal. He doesn't know who they are. He knows they go to his school, but he doesn't know who this person is that is also gay, who is not out yet. It's a really beautiful love story, but obviously is highly emotional, and I loved it. And I cried during the movie too. I just sat on my couch and just boobed. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I'm currently reading this book, but every time Sirius dies, I cry. I know he only dies once, but every time I read it and Sirius dies, I cry because I love him, and I think it's really shitty that he had to die. Like, I get why, I guess, but we only got to know him for 2 books, and then he was taken from us, and that was really sad. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince makes me cry, obviously, because of Dumbledore. We love Dumbledore through 6 books, and then he's taken from us. I feel just like J.K. Rowling just went on a killing spree in the last 3 books of the series, and it sucked. I just pulled another one off the shelf. And of course, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows makes me cry every time because everybody dies in this book. I can't. Everybody dies. I mean, you know who dies. Lupin dies. Fred dies. This dust jacket is on this book upside down. And Tonks. Everybody dies. And that sucks. And I hate it. And I wish it didn't have to be that way. Especially Lupin. Lupin gets me hard because I love him through the entire series. I love Lupin. He's my favorite character in the series. So it's hard to say goodbye to him and Tonks. Oh gosh. I said I wouldn't cry! Okay, 3 left. Look, my eyes are filled with tears because I'm tired, okay? 2 are by our good friend John Green. The Fault in Our Stars rips you apart and doesn't really put you back together. The Fault in Our Stars is about 2 teenagers with cancer, or who are in recovery from cancer. It's a beautiful young adult romance with just a heartbreaking ending. And I mean, most people have either seen the movie or read the books. So when Gus dies, I am just a blubbery mess. I read this book several times. When Devin and I watched the movie, we both just sat there and just quietly cried because we didn't really want to, like, know that the other person was crying. Oh my gosh. These books are so sad. I'm just kidding. I just yawn and my eyes do this. Every time Gus dies, I mean, he dies one time, but every time I read it and Gus dies, I'm in pieces. It's so good. 2 years ago, John Green released his most recent book, Turtles All the Way Down. This book is about a 16-year-old girl named Asa Holmes who struggles with OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder, that controls many aspects of her life. It's pretty severe, and there is a scene or 2 where her obsessive-compulsive disorder comes out really strongly around some of her friends and family, and she becomes basically unsafe. And having struggled with obsessive-compulsive disorder myself for many, many years, it was really impactful for me to read a book from somebody who also has the same disorder and can give a retelling of it so beautifully. I love this book. I think everybody needs to read this book. And the final and most recent book that made me cry was a recommendation from Emma Books here on YouTube. She's one of the bigger booktubers. She recommended this book in a video and I ordered it immediately. That book is The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. This book is about a girl named Eden who is raped by her brother's best friend. And it goes through 4 years of high school of how she deals with that trauma. She doesn't tell a single soul until the very, very end of the book in her senior year of high school. And it just goes over how this event changed who she was to her very core. Being a survivor of sexual assault myself, it was very, very impactful for me. There's a conversation that Eden has with her mom that is almost word for word with a conversation that I had with my mom when I was 21, when my trauma, and I didn't know it was trauma at the time, but the events that happened to me had been contributing so much to my mental state. I ended up running away from home when I was 21. Silly, I know, but I packed a backpack and I ran from my house. I was not in a good space then, and just a conversation that Eden House with her mom was almost word for word with a conversation that I had with my mom the day that I ran away from home. So that was a little jaw-dropping for me. I was finishing this book a couple weeks ago while I was moving my in-laws across the country from outside of Chicago to southern Utah, like a 4-day road trip. And we were just coming into Flagstaff, Arizona, and it had gotten dark. So I was reading by the light of my cell phone, which I've done since I was like 12, so that my mom wouldn't know I was reading. And then I started to like whimper cry, and I took off my noise canceling headphones, and I was like, Mom, my mother-in-law, who was in the car with me, I was like, I'm okay. This is just really heavy. I'm gonna be okay. Okay, I'm just gonna cry it out. She was like, okay. So we got to our hotel before I had finished it. We got into our hotel rooms. The rest of the family was in one of the other motel rooms, and I was by myself in our room, finishing this book. Just tears all over the bedspread and down in my cleavage and just everywhere. And then I finished the book. And I put it down, and I put my arms down on the bed, my head in my arms, and I just sobbed. This book has changed me. It was so hard to read about trauma that is so real to me. By page 10, I was already crying, and I had to take a little break because it started bringing up some unpleasant memories for me. But I'm really glad that I pushed through it, because this book has changed me. I loved this book, as hard as it was to read, and as much as it made me cry for like an hour. I think that's it. There's probably more. I might have books on my Kindle that have made me cry, but I've since returned them to the Amazon Kindle Unlimited library, so I can't remember. But that is plenty for now. That's a lot of books that have made me cry. In the comments down below, let me know the saddest book you've ever read. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!